friends, it's Sandy here, and thank you so much for stopping in and joining me today. I have 3 cards to share with you today using a layered stencil background. I'm creating today with the Dimensional Cube Stencil and Positively Saturated Inks from Simon Says Stamps, and I'm creating these beautiful backgrounds. This is a 3-layer stencil. You get this base, which does all the white lines for you, and then you get the fill-in. And you can flip this 4 different ways to fill in all 4 sides. See how it fits right there? And then you can turn it again for the next layer and the next layer and the next layer. I'm getting dizzy. And then finally, the little diamonds in the center. Awesome stencil set and so easy to use. These are the little brushes I'm going to be playing with today, new from Simon Says Stamps, the detailed round blending brushes, and they also have some detailed flat blending brushes. And these are great for tiny little spaces and for the ends of the flowers that I will be demonstrating in today's video. Simon's Positively Saturated inks come in sets of 3, light, medium, and dark, and I'm going to be using these blues along with amethyst for my first card today. I'm also going to be using the MISTI sticky mats. There's 3 in a package, and they have a protective cover on the back of the sticky part, and I love using these for stenciling. I don't need my pixie spray anymore, and very little of my post-it note tape that I used to use a lot of when I was stenciling. So all you do is cut down your cardstock. This is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 piece of hammermill white. You stick it down on the surface, and then you're going to take the number 1 stencil, the one with all the thin lines, and you're going to line it up so you have an even design on both sides of the paper. Next, you're going to take the second stencil and line it up over top of the first one, and this is the fill-in stencil, so we're going to start filling in sections of the squares underneath. I am using post-it note tape to hold these in place because, of course, they're the same size, so they're not touching the sticky mat at all. Here's what I like about the sticky mat. You get this all down and attached, and nothing's going to move, but you can move the whole thing because it's all stuck to the mat. So you don't have it just going one direction. If you want to get in there and do some detailed work, you can turn it. So I'm going to be using Surf for my first color today. It is the medium of the colors, and I'm going to be using the medium size brush. Simon Says Stamps brushes come in 3 different sizes, and they also have colored handles, so it's really easy to decide which ones you want to use. We're going to be using the detailed brush for the little squares at the end. So I use this for all 3 colors, so I like to clean my brush before I start just to make sure I don't have the darkest color on there. And I'm just going to quickly start rubbing in the color. You want to go in both directions so that you get all the little nooks and crannies in the stencil. And I've got this sped up a little bit so that you don't have to watch me for 5 minutes doing this. We get all the way to the end, and now I'm going to remove the post-it note tape, and we're going to see the pretty design. You also want to wipe off any of the excess ink that's sitting up on top of your stencil. Otherwise, you're going to end up with goopy fingers. And there we go. There is the first color. Now, the reason I did the medium color is because the light can go over top of the medium, but it's very hard for the medium to go over top of the light. So we're going back to the lightest color next, and I'm just cleaning my brush off. And this is Seafoam. It's the lightest of the 3 colors. And I still have stencil number 1 in place because I want those defined white lines to be at the end of my design. And I am just getting in there and adding ink all the way across the paper. And again, I have this sped up. So there we go. I'm almost finished. I just got some light spots I'm trying to fill in. It's a pretty contrast. Okay, next step is we have added the little diamond stencil over top, and I'm using the detailed round brush, and I'm adding amethyst to the center of each of my squares. You don't really have to worry about the ones on the outside because we are going to be cutting this down with a die to make it into a card front. So that's why I'm not worrying about the ones going down the right-hand side. And again, once you get all finished, you want to wipe off that purple that's sitting up on top of your stencil. Otherwise, you're going to transfer it with your fingers. Remove the post-it note. And here's the fun part, the reveal. I love it when you peel all these off. And then you gently can peel the paper away from the sticky mat. This is a great invention by MISTI, and look at that beautiful background. Woohoo! For the second background, we're starting off the same as the first. You're going to lay your cardstock down onto the sticky mat. You're going to put stencil number 1 over top of it because we want the lines, again, the detail in the background. And this time we are going to use the block filler stencil, and we're going to add 2 colors. So I'm taping it down so that I can start with my first color. And we're going to be using Seafoam again as our first color. You know me in blue. Okay, so getting in there, and we are just going to fill in the colors. Once the blue is done, you want to clean the stencil, and then you want to flip it around to the other side. And now I'm lining up the other side with the fill-in block and taping it down, and I'm adding more blue. So these are going to butt up against each other. And you're going to see the reveal right now. Isn't it cool? So it makes a completely different pattern. So I have the block stencil lined up again, and it's on the other side of the blue. We're going to be filling that in with the green, and I'm starting with the lightest color, which is the celery, making sure that I don't have dark green on my brush. And we're going to quickly add the celery down this side. Again, go both ways so that you get into all the nooks and crannies. You're going to take this off. You're going to turn the stencil, and you're going to line it up so that it lines up right on the edge of the other side of the block. So we're kind of making angled squares, if that makes any sense at all. But we've got the line stencil in underneath of all this, so it's going to give us some really nice detail when we pull this all off. Okay, so I'm done with the green. Here comes the reveal. Look at those, aren't they cool? Little squares. Okay, so now we're going to take our little diamond and we're going to pop it over top. And I'm going to use the medium blue, which is the surf, and my detailed round brush to color in all these little diamonds in between the green and the blue. So again, just a couple of strips of Post-it note tape to secure it in place. We're still working on our sticky mat, so everything's nice and tight. And we're just going to zip through and add the little bit darker blue to the center. So this whole background is going to be a little bit lighter than the first one that we did. I just wanted to show you the difference in the details. So there we are. We peel off the line stencil and then remove it from the sticky mat, and we have another beautiful background. Isn't it pretty? And look how different they look just by changing colors. And one of the colors is the same. For the third design, we're not going to use the outline line, that number 1. I'm setting that aside. We're going to use the filler blocks, and we're laying that directly down onto our paper. And we're going to start with Seafoam, I think, and adding that. And then I'm going to pick up that stencil right after I clean it. And I'm going to turn it all the way around, and I'm going to line the blocks up on the other side. And then adding that, and when you take the block stencil off, look at the cool reveal that you get. Isn't it nice? So this time we're putting the diamonds back down, trying to line them up. You want to get them as close as possible. And I'm cleaning the blue off because I forgot before. This time I'm going with Ocean, so it's the darkest of the 3 colors. And I can use my bigger brush right now because I got nothing else on there, and the stencil is flat. So just running it in. I don't have another stencil underneath, so the detailed brush really gets into those when they're quite deep. You can use a medium-sized brush for this one. Plus it goes faster because it picks up more ink. Okay, and again, you don't need to worry about the edges because we're going to be cutting those off anyway. I'm getting in there, just going the other way, making sure I got all the little corners covered. And again, pop it off, and there's the reveal. Now, look at that design. Isn't that cool? Love it. So I have my 3 backgrounds built now. I'm going to use the A2 thin frames, the second from largest, and I'm going to lay it down and try and get my design as centered as possible. And I'm using Spellbinder's sticky tape. I am going to die cut all 3 of these to the same size. They end up being a little bit less than 4 by 5 1/4 if you don't happen to have them. Okay, we've got them all cut out. And now I have some die cuts I'm going to be adding to them. For the flowers on 2 of the cards, we're using the Etched Meadow Flower and Leaves. This S722 from Simon Says Stamps. And the leaves that go with those are the Etched Laurel Leaves. And the third one, the big flower that I just showed you, is Etched Evening Blossoms. And I have links to all of these underneath this video as well as over on my blog. For this medium one with the large flower, I cut that 3 times and stacked it so that it was nice and thick for the card. And then the third one, we're going back to the same as the first one with the Etched Laurel Leaves and the Etched Meadow Flowers. We're again going to use the positively saturated inks to ink up all of our die cuts, and I'm starting with the Laurel Leaves. I'm going to be covering most of the leaf with Surf, and then I'm going to come back in and add a little bit of highlight with Celery. And I'm using the small brush. You could probably use the medium brush and this will go a little bit faster, but I was trying not to get too much ink on the very outside tips is why I was sticking with the little one. And you'll see here why in a second, because I'm adding the green to the tips. I just want to get most of the leaves done. And I think my ink pad needs to be re-inked. I'll take care of that off camera. Usually they're a little bit juicier than this, even if it is a light blue. So, okay, so here comes the green. So I end up adding it kind of to the whole thing. And then what I'm doing is I'm going back over with Surf to help blend it in a little bit. And it gives a really pretty contrast, and it really makes the leaves pop when you get them on the card. So it's worth the extra step adding the extra color. So again, just moseying along, getting it all finished. I'm only going to do one of these for you. There we go. And then the little guy gets the same treatment. And they get stacked on the side of the card, the big one at the top, and then the little one just fills in the bottom. And you won't even see the join because we cover it with one of the flowers. So again, I'm covering the whole thing in Surf. Now I'm coming back in and I'm adding my tip highlights with Celery. And there we go. Cleaning off my glass mat. And I'm going to change out to the flowers. And we're going to be using Amethyst for the flower. And it's fun. This is a very, very deep color. But you can pull it a really long ways and end up with a nice highlight. So ink once, start at the bottom of the flower and just keep pulling it up. And you'll see that you get this beautiful kind of faded effect as you go up. Kind of a gradient. Really pretty. So we'll just do the third one. And then to add a little bit of depth into the bottom, I'm going to come back in with the blue, the Surf. And I'm going to add that just at the bottom and just pull it up a tiny, tiny little bit. And you'll see the difference. I'm going to hold up 2 flowers here in a sec because it kind of doesn't look too different, but then when I hold it up, look at the difference. It's amazing. So I'm doing this to all 3 of the flowers, just a little bit at the bottom. You don't want to pull it up too far. And then there's the third one. Doesn't it add a pretty highlight? Those 2 colors together are just fabulous. Okay, so you want to bend the stem on the one so it's fairly straight. Sorry, I'm a little bit off camera on this. I'm zoomed in so close. And I'm just roughly laying them out so that you can see the contrast. Isn't it pretty? Love it! So for the second background, I decided to do the leaves all in seafoam. Kind of my ode to Ukraine. This one's all done in yellows and blues. And I decided to keep the leaves just kind of simple, and they're going to pull the same color as the little diamond in the center of the background, which I also did in the seafoam. So as I said, I decided to do yellow for these. This is Lemonade, Sunbeam, and Citron, and I'm starting obviously with the lightest color. and I'm going to flood the entire flower, again starting at the bottom and pulling up. That way you get the darkest color at the bottom where the shadow usually is on the flowers. So it's kind of a natural coloring process. And just adding a little gradient of color. Very, very pretty. And I'm just tearing off the stem, and you're going to do that 3 times for this card. For my third and final card, again, I cut the etched evening blossom 3 times and stacked them all together using white glue. And again, I'm starting with amethyst, and from the center of the flower with the round detailed brush, I'm pulling out the color. And we're going to do the same colors on this as we did on the first one. I'm going all the way around in the amethyst, and then I'm going to come back in and add a little bit of surf, again just from the center. And it adds some really, really pretty blue streaks to the petals of this flower. So just switching out my colors here. Lost my brush. There it is. Okay, here we go. And just see, as I'm pulling it up, that little bit of blue that pops in there. Really pretty. And it just really deepens the purple too. Okay, and then we're going to go to the leaves next. I'm putting a little bit more amethyst on there just to darken it up a little bit. Cover a little bit of the white on the flowers. Okay, cleaning up my mess off my glass mat. And I'm starting with the surf on the leaves and the stem. And again, from the center out, so that the darkest part of the leaf is closest to the stem, as they usually are in nature. And then I'm going to bring in a bit of ocean. So this is the darkest of the blues. And I'm not going all the way out to the end of the leaves. And then I'm going to add a little bit of lime-issues. They had fun making these names up, didn't they? And I'm coming from the top down on these, just adding a little bit of green to the tips. It just adds a little bit, kind of, it looks like sunlight. And here's my pretty flower. And it's going to look fabulous on that background. So because this is so thick, I decided to go around the edges with the color as well, because I had white edges going on. Okay, so for the sentiment. For the first 2 cards, I used the Hexagon Greetings from Simon Says Stamps. And for the third card, I used the Greetings Mix 1. And I love the font on this one. Isn't it pretty? It's big and bold, just like my flower. There's a stamp set. It's a lovely stamp set. It has all kinds of different sentiments on it. There you go. There's all 3 cards. I have a detailed description and list of supplies used underneath this video, as well as over on my blog, along with a PDF file for each of the cards too that you can print off and use to recreate these cards. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please consider giving me a thumbs up and sharing it with your friends. And until next time, toodles!